Krystal, what are you taking a look at?
There is a new shocking report out of Louisville, Kentucky. So apparently, the Department of Labor found that 2 10-year-olds were working unpaid shifts at a McDonald's restaurant. This is just as horrifying as it sounds. According to CBS News, officials said the children were not paid, yet sometimes worked as late as 2 a.m., and they, quote, prepared and distributed food orders, cleaned the store, worked at the drive-thru window, and operated a register. Investigators learned that one of the 2 children was allowed to operate a deep fryer. That is a prohibited task for workers under the age of 16. Now, there's a good reason kids under 16 are barred from working the deep fryer. It's really dangerous. Just a year ago, a 15-year-old in Tennessee suffered hot oil burns while working the deep fryer at a different McDonald's. Now, the owner of this offending McDonald's, Bauer LLC, claimed no awareness of the fact that 10-year-olds were working the register, manning the drive-thru, and operating the deep fryer. Owner Sean Bauer told CBS News the kids were not approved to be in that part of the restaurant and that they were there at the direction of and in the presence of their parents. But this is far from the first child labor law violation from Mr. Bauer's company. They were hit with a $40,000 assessment after the Department of Labor found they had 24 kids under 16 working longer than approved hours. Nor is this a problem confined to this one McDonald's franchisee. There are 3 McDonald's franchisees, which combined operate 62 McDonald's, that were found to have worked 305 children longer than the allowable hours. Now, this is part of a larger trend, which through new laws and violations of existing laws is working to roll back a century's worth of child labor protections. According to the Economic Policy Institute, the number of child labor law violations has skyrocketed over 200% since 2015, and we have seen a 37% increase just year over year. A recent investigation found kids aged 13 to 17 employed by a meatpacking sanitation company. These kids were forced to clean back saws, brisket saws, and head splitters at meatpacking plants owned by some of the top names in big food in this country. New York Times recently published a heartbreaking report on the way undocumented kids are being funneled into a nationwide network of effectively indentured servitude, exploited for low wages, backbreaking labor, and horrifying conditions, all because their youth and immigration status make them easy prey. Just as disturbing is the successful industry lobbying effort to make some of these harmful practices perfectly legal. This year alone, 8 bills have been pushed in 6 different states to roll back child labor restrictions. Arkansas made headlines when Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders signed a law repealing restrictions on 14 and 15-year-olds as a group of children appearing rather bereft looked on. We covered recently how Iowa has gone even further. A newly signed law brings us straight back to Dickens, with young teens working on assembly lines, in meat coolers, in construction, and in industrial laundries. And to circle back here to McDonald's illegally employing literal 10-year-olds, one of the main drivers behind these changes is the powerful National Restaurant Association, a giant lobby for big food interests, including McDonald's. More Perfect Union basically got one of their lobbyists to admit that they wrote the draconian Iowa bill. The timing of this push to get kids into meat lockers and handling deep fryers, by the way, is no accident. For my entire life, employers had the upper hand with workers in every single way. They could treat them as disposable, they could crush any fledgling union attempts, they could steal their wages, and they could pay them very little. Well, a lot of this is still going on, but now workers are starting to get a modicum of power back. Unemployment is low, labor market is tight. That gives individual workers more power on their own, since they can leave an abusive, low-paying, or exploitative jobs with a higher level of confidence that they will be able to find something else. In fact, even as inflation continues to bite, there are some decently encouraging things happening for the lowest wage workers. A working paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research finds that wages are rising quickest for the lowest paid workers, and that this trend has actually reduced inequality. That's a phrase I have not heard in my entire life. This trend has also shrunk the college wage premium. Retailers like Target and Walmart have been forced to hike wages in order to retain or attract the workers that they need to staff their stores, and obviously they're not doing all of this out of the goodness of their hearts. But rather than have to raise wages, big business would rather maintain their record-breaking profit margins and just find cheaper and more vulnerable labor. And that, of course, is where the kids come in. Employers love child labor for the same reason today as they did 100 years ago. Kids are cheap, they can be more easily manipulated, and crucially, they're less likely to form a union. In fact, it was the labor movement which successfully pushed the first federal child labor protections all the way back in the 1930s. Photographer Lewis Hine traveled the country, documenting kids in dangerous and horrible working conditions. This shocked and horrified America. At the same time, activists made the case to the country that child labor was bad for everyone except big business because it also depressed wages for adult workers. That was a compelling argument at the time as the nation was struggling through the Great Depression. Organized labor made the success of this multi-pronged effort possible. Now, in our current moment, unions have been beaten back. Union density is at historic lows. However, employers, especially those in the service sector, feel the threat of potential unionization like they haven't in decades. Successful union drives at Starbucks, REI, Chipotle, and elsewhere, they have made fast food and retail a real target. The desire to avoid a union is another often overlooked reason that big business prefers to rely on young teens for their workforce, or even, apparently, 10-year-olds. Now, if there's one thing I've realized in the past few years, it's that bad old ideas, they're never really dead. They're just dormant, waiting for a moment of opportunity to rear their ugly heads again. Whether it's the post-Dobbs horrors, women being forced to bleed out in a parking lot until they're near death before doctors will actually treat them, or new effort to trap spouses in unhappy or abusive marriages by rolling back no-fault divorce laws, or kids being sent to clean head splitters in meatpacking plants when they should be, doing homework and getting ready for school or just being kids. We must apparently remain ever vigilant to make sure that rights remain intact and that our fast food is not being served up by Happy Meal-age children. These days, nothing is sacred. This story has sparked a national outcry just because of the tender age of these youth.
Just because they were so young. Yeah.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Soccer and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.